Hi guys, Spinifex Left Hand here. Metal detecting, as you all know, isn't just about the finds, nor particularly about the places that we go on our adventures. Sometimes it can be about the people that we meet when we're out and about. This is the story about one of those people. So, once upon a time, about 3 weeks ago, I decided to go on a late night beach hunt. Now this beach that I intended to detect, whilst it wasn't exactly remote, it was somewhat isolated in as much as it lay between two towns. So there was definitely no street lighting, there was no infrastructure, and the only access to the beach was via two bush car parks. It had been raining for most of the day and intermittent showers still blew in from the southeast, but they didn't bother me. My gear's all waterproof and to some extent so am I. So once I actually got to the beach, I turned to the south and headed towards a small sandy cove that I knew lay down the end. When I got to the sandy cove, I couldn't actually go any further south because a large rocky headland jutted out into the sea. To the west, behind me, the rainforest spilt down the escarpment and actually encroached onto the sand by a few metres. And then to the east, the beautiful coral sea. For a while I stood down at the waterline and marvelled at the fact that really there was nothing between me and Bolivia, 18,000 kilometres away. So then I walked up to the scrub line, started to detect, and after a few moments I became aware of a mound in the sand. It was about 20 inches high and maybe 2.5 foot in diameter, and a few feet further on there was another mound. As I stood there staring at them, I thought, these don't really seem to be made by human endeavour, nor by the action of wind or waves. And as I stood there trying to make sense of them, a question slowly developed in my mind. Could these be crocodile nests? As you know, the saltwater crocodile is fairly prolific in this part of northern Australia, and you really have to be careful any time that you're near the water, whether that be a river, an estuary, the beach of course, or even the saltwater, not the saltwater, the stormwater drains that run through the towns. So I turned on my head torch to make sure that there was nothing lurking in the scrub behind me, and then I shone its relatively weak beam down to the water's edge. Guys, there staring back at me was the largest, yellowest, unblinking eyes of death that I've ever seen. Okay, I think to myself, I've got Mother Crocodile here and I'm standing between her and her nest. But I didn't panic, didn't scream, didn't run away. Like any good detectorist worth his salt, I conducted a quick threat assessment. So I figured that on this side of the risk matrix, I've got perhaps a 4 to 5 metre saltwater crocodile, 800 pounds of jaws, claws and teeth, and one that's highly motivated to kill me. On my side of the risk matrix, I've got one Spinifex Left Hand, 150 pounds, who's highly motivated to survive. But I wasn't without other resources. Of course I had my Garrett Sea Hunter Mark II, a sturdy machine by any measure, although I wasn't quite certain how long it would stand up to a thrust and parry manoeuvre with a saltwater crocodile. And then, if things went really pear-shaped, I always had my Leshy digging tool if it came down to hand-to-jaws combat. Now, discretion, as you know, being the better part of valour, I decided that the best thing to do would to be, well, simply egress the beach to the north, the way I came in. The problem with that is that there was rocks and scrub to the left of me, which I couldn't go over. I had to actually go around. Now, that necessitated that I'd actually have to walk closer to the crocodile, and that's what I decided to do. So without taking my eyes off it, I slowly inched towards it, and then, in the weak beam of the torch, I became aware of another shadow, a shape, standing next to the crocodile. As I strained my eyes to see, I could just vaguely make out the outline of a man, and what I actually thought was the crocodile was in fact a large buff-headed dog. I turned the head torch off, and mostly so that I could enjoy the same cover of darkness that this guy had. And I remember feeling somewhat disconcerted when I wondered how long he might have been standing there staring at me. So I followed my initial plan, walked around the rocks, and maybe went 50 to 100 metres up the beach. But every now and again I'd glance back down the beach, and I was aware that this guy and his dog were slowly coming up towards me. And then, all of a sudden, he appeared next to me. I turned on my head torch, and I was amazed to see that he was completely naked. Now, when I say naked, he wasn't even wearing a hat. He certainly wasn't carrying a towel, nor any of his clothes. And for the fact that the dog was wearing a collar, the dog was actually more completely attired than this fellow was. So I turned off my head torch, one, to spare his modesty, not that he seemed to have any, and two, to disguise, obviously, the expression of ill ease that I had on my face. Now, I've got to tell you at this point, I'm not homophobic at all, nor am I prudish. But the truth of the matter is that I really don't want to be within 1.5 miles of a naked man, especially at 1 o'clock in the morning on the beach when we're the only two there and he's standing in the same square metre of sand that I am. But anyway, this bloke started to chat, and he didn't seem like a bad fellow. He said that he often came down to the beach for a swim, that the crocodiles didn't worry him at all, and that he found it very liberating to be under Mother Nature at night. He then went on to suggest that if I wanted to, I could even metal detect in the nude. Now, I said to him, look, I'm not fundamentally against the idea, but the fact of the matter is that I wear a heavy equipment belt. It'd probably rash my skin, so I'd be electing to keep my clothes on. But we chatted about other things, the beauty of the rainforest and the coral sea. And the thing is, he must have really enjoyed my talk on metal detecting, because when I finished, he said, look, why don't you come back to my car? I'm parked in car park number 2, and we can chat further. So I thanked him for his kind offer, bid him good evening, and as I watched his naked butt disappear into the gloom, I said a quiet prayer thanking God that I had in fact parked in car park number 1. On my drive home that night, I had this reoccurring thought in my mind that said, you know, I really wish it had been a crocodile. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.